Okay. To me, and this is not something that I've picked off internet. This is asset liability management as we see it in the company. It's really trying to match your cash inflows to your cash outflows and ensuring that you do not leave a negative gap in the middle. When I say that, I mean those cash inflows could be your present cash inflows or your future cash inflows, your expected cash inflows, and your cash outflows could be your present cash outflows or your future cash outflows. In fact, I would go one step further and say that in asset liability matching or asset liability management, typically the order is that you create a provision for assets so that you could provide for your liabilities later. However, this order can very easily be reversed, and it is reversed, as you see it with people like me who like to spend on credit cards and have a house loan and a car that you keep paying for forever. So you actually do not have an asset, but you have a liability. So what you're doing is that you've created a cash outflow now in expectation of a future cash inflow. So you've actually done a liability asset model for that matter. So I started with that because when we have discussions on ALM, the stereotype is to actually think in terms of having assets to provide for liabilities later. But it could be the other way around. Did I confuse you? If I did, I mean, just wait when Junaid comes over. And like I said, please do not hesitate. Ask as many questions. Now, to know your liabilities, I mean, we all think that knowing your assets is easier. But to know your liabilities, what you need to know really is your needs. And we are not talking corporates as yet. We're not even talking institutions. We're not talking about pension funds. We're not talking about corporate treasuries. We're talking about us as individuals. To actually assess what our liabilities could be in future, what we need to know is that what are our future needs? What are our future wants and desires? That's what we need to know to actually be able to assess what our future liabilities would be. And when we know what our future liabilities would be, only then we know what our future cash outflows would be like. So when we start thinking in these terms, that's when you can actually have what we call objective-based investing. You create your objectives because you have your liabilities cut off and you know what your future cash outflows are going to be, and therefore you create a provision with your assets today. So you have a clear, defined, spelled out, quantitative objective, which in turn would then actually determine your portfolio quantitatively and qualitatively. So it's a process that you follow in steps. You, like I said earlier, you define your needs and objectives. And this presentation is slightly dated. Someone wise told me that if you're not very well prepared for a presentation, start criticizing yourself before you actually start off. So due to technical difficulties, this is not the updated version that we have here, but I'll try to make up for that. So you define your needs and your objectives, as I just spoke about earlier. Your needs, like I said, is a function of your wants and your desires. And that would really depend on your disposable income and on your age. So if you have a larger disposable income, and mind you, I'm saying disposable income and not income. So that's income that you can spare. So if you have a larger income that you can spare, chances are that you'd have more desires than wants. So it would be different for each individual. And I cut out some examples so that we can understand it and try to sort of make it as simplistic as possible. I take an example of a lower middle class 8-year-old who wants to have an ice cream and doesn't have money for it. So he makes a plan, he says, okay, I'm going to have this ice cream on this weekend. I'll have this ice cream Saturday afternoon, and today is Tuesday. So he saves up a couple of rupees every day from wherever he can, maybe he stuffs it in a box, and for the Saturday, and when he has enough money, he'd go out and buy that ice cream. So what he's done is, really, if you try and understand that he understood a future cash outflow, and he started providing it for that now. So he made regular contributions into an investment, into a saving, put it in a box, and he had the right kind of money when the need arose. A middle-class young professional who wants to, buy a fancy wristwatch, for example, in the next couple of months, he'd probably put away money a little differently, and we'll talk about that a little later. A middle-class 45-year-old, who suddenly realizes that I'm going to retire in a while. People like myself, just beginning to realize that we have to retire and do something about it. While we still have our liabilities placed ahead of our assets. A 35-year-old who wants to save for children, for wedding, for education, for whatever purposes. An upper-class 25-year-old who just wants to save for the heck of it. He has loads of money. He doesn't know what to save for, but he has enough to save. That's an objective. And why am I going into these different examples? The reason is because that would determine your portfolios, and that would determine where exactly and when you put your money away. So what you do is, I'd repeat, you identify your needs, your wants, your desires, and put them in an order of priority. Most of us would not be fortunate enough to provide for all our wants and desires. We'd probably always have a little way to go. So what we do is that we'd have to prioritize and say, okay, this is what we must have, and this is what we can probably leave for later. So you try and have a comprehensive analysis. You discover your resources and say, okay, these are my resources, and therefore this is as much of my liabilities that I can match with it. And then you try and start matching your cash outflows and your inflows. So the middle-aged 8-year-old that we talked about, like I said, would stuff it in a box. The person who wants a wristwatch would probably buy it off a credit card and therefore create the liability ahead of the asset and would worry about the asset later. Still is asset liability matching of some kind. The 45-year-old would probably have a portfolio with a mix of stocks and fixed income, and perhaps starting higher in stocks because he's younger, he can afford to take higher risk, and then probably tapering it off at time. The 35-year-old would perhaps do the same approach. He's got even longer. He's probably going to look into precious metals as well, perhaps commodities. A 25-year-old, he doesn't need that money that bad. He's not so sure when he needs it. He can go into speculative things, he can go into derivatives, he can go into exotic stuff, he can go into stocks, he can go into currencies, he can go into precious metals, you name it. However, one important determinant for our portfolio would be the risk that we have to analyze before we do it. So the child who stuffs it in a box actually is running a risk that his money could get stolen, for example. So he has to manage that risk accordingly. The person who's borrowing on a credit card is actually running a risk of not having his cash inflows tomorrow and therefore ending up in a default. The person who has a mix of stocks and fixed income is taking all kinds of risks. He's exposed on price volatility, he's exposed on credit risk, rising out of fixed income, he's exposed on interest rate risks and whatnot. Similarly, the middle class 35-year-old exposed to similar risks. So how do we ensure that we manage these risks and we have a portfolio which is desirable and also provides for all the liabilities that we can encompass? You start by adhering to a goal